Hello, so today we're going to be doing this problem. Use a for loop in the range function to print the numbers from 3 up to 30 by 3's exactly as shown. All numbers on the same line, separated by a single space. And then print something afterwards with an apostrophe, and then do the same thing almost with a while loop. Okay, so we're going to be talking about a few things here. We're going to talk about a for loop. We're going to talk about the range function, what it is, how to use it, the print function a little bit, and then talk about a while loop. So to start, I think we're going to start with the range function. So what is the range function? I'm in Python here, right? So if I type range, it's a thing, it's a class. So what can we do with it? Well, if I have something in Python, my first step is often to go to dir and see what dir has to say about it. Dir range, that's going to give me a list of things that are attached to the class that I'm asking about, or whatever the method I'm asking about. There's a lot of double underscore methods that are usually things I'm not going to mess with, but at the end is going to be things that methods or attributes that this class is going to have. So it'll just be a little hint at what we have. We'll have a count, index, start, step, stop, whatever those are. We'll figure it out. But dir is a tool I'll go to chronically, so start there. Another thing is help. You can always go and search for it, but there's some built-in help here. So let's see what help range has to say. So we have the class name, range. It can take a stop, give you a range object, or it can take a start and a stop, and optionally a step, and that'll give us a range object. What does it say? Return an object that produces a sequence of integers from start inclusive to stop exclusive by step. Okay, what does that mean? Well, let's play with it a little bit. So we'll assign a variable, call it R1, and give it a range of 5. All right, what does that do? R1, what are you? You're a range from 0 to 5. Okay, what do you have? Dir, let's dir you. So just like before, it's a range object. So it has all the stuff that a range has. So I guess R1 dot start is 0. Okay. So this is a range from 0 to 5, but I want to know what's in the range, right? But it's sort of like inside there. If I could just get it into a list, that would be nice. Well, list is a class of itself. List will take something like a range and turn it into a list. So if I do that, I should get a list of that range object. All right, so a list there. It's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I did 0, 5. So we have the 0, but we don't have the 5. Why is that? Well, it's because the start is inclusive, but the stop is exclusive. So that means that what you put for a start, which we didn't because start defaults to 0. So if you don't put something, it's going to start at 0. and and it's going to end at whatever it is before you tell it to stop. So we put 5, so it's going to stop at 4. Okay, so we have a list from 0 to 4. What else can we do with range? Well, we did range with one variable. What if we did it with two? Let's put 3 and 10. What do you think will happen here? So we passed it two values. So that's probably going to meet this criteria. So it should pass us back a range object. So if I put type, should be, well, I don't know why that is, dir range. That's interesting. I have no idea why type range comes back as class type. If you figure it out, let me know. But the dir of range, oh, sorry. It's range that I asked for the type of, but range is a class. However, the type of this R2 is a range. Yes, because I was asking for the type of the whole class. I guess that's a type class. But okay, the type of the instance that we created here, this R2, is a range. This is an instance of a range. Okay, and what do we, it's 3 to 10, so are we going to get 3 through 10? We list that out. R2. We don't have 10, right? We have 9 because range, the stop is exclusive, so the ending value is not included. Definitely got to keep that in mind because we'll fall into some traps otherwise. All right, so we did one value and two values. What is this step thing? Step thing is going to be three values. So range, let's say 4 through 100 by 20. All right. So this should start at 4, step by 20, and end at no greater than 99, right? So it's going to go 4, and then 24, and then 44, 64, 84. I think. Are we right? 4, 24, 44, 64, 84. Great. Okay. So that's great. What do we actually want from this? I think we can get it with what we have now. So we want to print the numbers from 3 up to 30 by threes, exactly as shown, we'll worry about later. So 3 up to 30 by threes. So we'll just call this R because it's good. Range, we're starting at 3, we're ending at 30, and we're stepping by 3. So do you see a problem here? I hope you do. And the problem is that the 30 is exclusive. So if I kept it at 30, it would not include 30. It would exclude 30. So range 3, 31, 3. We'll go 3 plus 3 is 6, plus 3 is 9, up to whatever the highest value below 31 it can get to. Let's see if that worked. 369 up to 30. Great. I'll note we could have done 31, 32, or 33. They both would have caused the same list to be formed or the same range. So this is what we're going to come back to here, or what we're going to take away from this talk about ranges. This gets us what we want. But the next thing we're going to talk about is a for loop. And a for loop is a way to navigate through an iterable. And an iterable is something that has like individual pieces. It's probably easiest to think of a list, and a list has items, right? But it's not only lists that are iterable. A list certainly is iterable, but also a string is iterable because a string has an A, has an S, has a T, has an R, has an I. So a string can be iterated by character. So I'll call them iterables, and you might think it's easier to think of it as a list, but understand that that's not all that you can iterate. So it's easiest to conceptualize a for loop by thinking without programming, thinking in English. So for if I want to go through every item in a list, I would go through each item in some list, right? And this thinking here for each item in some list, that's hopefully makes sense logically. You're going to go through each item in a list, but it's also the correct way to structure a for loop in Python. You have the for identifying it, each item in some list. And in Python, you then put uh, what is that, a colon, press enter, and then tab, and you would do whatever you want to do, print hello. And in a for loop, you can do multiple things. You just have to, Brandon, you just have to indent each time that you do it. A for loop ends when you stop the indent, when you return to the length, to the level you're at the for, right? Now we get an error here because some list is not defined because we don't have a list. Well, let's make this list. 1, 2, 4, 10. Okay, so this list is 4 values, 1, 2, 4, and 10. So what happens now if we go through for each item in some list? I'll just print hello and then go for it. So hello 4 times, right? There's 4 items in the list. So the question is now, why we never said each item what each item is. Like we never said each item equals something, right? So why does it know? Why didn't it say I don't know what each item is? And the reason is because that's the name that we give it, and we can call it anything we want. In the same way that we can call a variable anything, we can call it X, we can call it name, in the same way that we can call a variable whatever we want. This each item part is the word that we're going to use for each item in the list when we go into it. And we can call it whatever we want. Each item we called it here because it makes sense. It's better to make sense than not, but oftentimes you might just call it I for I in some list. But let's let's show it a little more substantially. Let's try for each item in some list print each item. What happens here, right? So in this case, we have each item that's being printed, but what is that going to be? Well, what happens is that each item, the first time you enter the for loop, each item becomes the first item in the list. And so it prints out 1. And then it goes back and it says, well, now I'm going to be 2. So then each item becomes 2. It prints 2. Same thing for 4. It prints 4. And 10. It prints 10. So the for loop is going to be extremely powerful in the long run. It's a concept that you'll use it all the time in programming. But this is a simple demonstration. So for each item in some list, do something. Okay, so what do we want to do? We want to use the for loop and the range function to print the numbers from 3 up to 30. All right, let's put these two pieces together then. Where'd we leave off with the range? I think we left off, we had something we wanted to keep. This one, R equals range 3, 31, 3. So range 3, 31, 3. That's our winner. Now, this range thing is an iterable. So even though it's not technically a list, we can turn it into a list. It's a range, but we can pass this into a for loop. And we have it assigned to the value r, but we don't need to do that. We can just pass this range directly in as this value here. So let's try that. For, what do you want to call it? We called it each item there. Let's call it number. I guess it's a number. So each time we go through, it's going to be a number. For number in range 3, 31, 3, colon, and then a tab here, we're going to print number. Okay, so we're close, right? We have the numbers listed 369 up to 30. However, this is on one line, whereas this is not. Why is that? Well, let's see. We're using the print function, built-in function of Python. So why is it not printing on the same line? Well, if we ask, let's see the help for Python. Let's see what they say. What is the print function? What are we doing here? Well, we print a value, or we can print a bunch of values. And the sep here is the string inserted between values, default to space. Okay, so if we were to print hello, Brandon, that separates it by a space. Okay, so we could override that, right? If we put sep equals, instead let's put 2 underscores. So then instead of having a space in between each value we pass to it, we have 2 underscores. Okay, but that's not quite what we want. The problem is the end, right? The end is a new line, and why is that? Well, here is end equals slash n, backslash n. Backslash n is it's called an escape character, I think. The backslash is a special character. I think it's called escape. Backslash n means new line. Backslash t means tab. This is not just Python, but computing in general. So if we were to print hello, new line, slash n, slash n, slash n, Brandon, slash t, how, slash n, Brandon, some mess here. That's why. See, we get 2 new lines, 3 new lines. Those are the 3 slash n's. And this slash t is a tab here. Doesn't quite look like it, but that's all right. Slash n, another new line. So that's what the slash n is. It means new line. So the default value, this is a default value. It's saying that if you don't put anything for n, I'm going to pretend like it's a new line. So if that's the case, we could override that end value. So instead of it ending with a line, it's going to end with a space. So let's redo that. What do we have? We had for number in range 3, 31, 3, print number, and then end equals, and it was a new line, but instead it's going to be a space. So there you go. That's going to change it from being all one line at a time here, and instead it's going to be one number at a time, separated by a space. So that should take care of the first part. part, right? That's going to get us this part. That's that with a for loop. That is, note the apostrophe. So I don't know what the reason for this is. Print that's that with a for loop. So I don't know why they pointed out that the apostrophe is a thing, except that if you're using a single quote, which you can do, single, in Python you can use a single or a double quote for a print statement. And if you were doing that, then that's what would be a problem, right? Because this is confused. It thinks this ends the quote. So you could use that same backslash is an escape character for quotes. So if you have this conflict, you could use this in front of the problem, in front of this apostrophe, to say don't like interpret that. Just pretend like it's literally just an apostrophe. It's not an end quote. So if you were using a single quote, you would need to use a backslash in order to use a single quote inside of your statement. Um, Similarly, if you were using a double quote, I said hello, this would fail because it gets confused by these double quotes. It thinks that this ends here. But if we threw in some backslashes inside the not actually end quote, we could say I said hello. So we could put double quotes in. In this case, if you're using a double quote for the that's what the for loop is statement, this single quote's fine because it doesn't conflict. So I'm not sure the point there, but that that should be it for that part. The next thing is the while loop. The while loop. So the while loop, we need to talk about conditionals to talk about the while loop. What is a condition? A condition is something that's either true or false, right? So like you can stay out as long as your room is clean, or something like that. So if your room is clean, then you can stay out. It's true or false. Is your room clean? True or false? That is a true or false statement. That's a condition. So a while loop uses conditionals. So while this condition is true, then do something. If you encounter a situation where this condition is no longer true, then we're done with the while loop. So while some condition, do something. That's the structure. And those underscores are the condition. So those underscores need to equal either true or false. They need to resolve to either true or false. And if it resolves to true, we enter or stay in the while loop. If they resolve to false, we leave the while loop. We'll have an error because that's just gibberish. But so let's think about this in our code that we need. So we want generates the output as the below, but with a while loop. So this is 7, 14, 21 up to 70. So it's counting by 7, starting from 7 and ending at 70. So with a while loop, we're going to need to define the value initially before we enter the while loop. So our first value is 7, right? That's where we start. And then we're going to enter the while loop. So how long do we want to stay in the while loop? Well, if we get to 77, we don't want to be, we want to be out of it, right? So if it's 77, then we want to be gone. So our value is called 7. So we want to enter the value. Is the value less than or equal to 10, true, right? So this is a conditional statement because it's either true or false. Value is greater than 0. This is also a conditional statement. Value, let's try less than 0. This is a conditional statement true. Even though it resolves to false, this is still a conditional statement because it's either true or false. So we need to find a condition for a while loop. We need to find a condition that we want to match, after which we will exit the loop. So that condition is what? We want to leave the while loop when the value becomes greater than 70. So we want to stay in the while loop while the value is less than 71, less than or equal to 70. So while the value is less than or equal to 70, we're going to say, okay. Now I'm going to show you something, and this is the danger of the while loop. As soon as I press enter twice, it's going to execute this while loop, and it's going to go crazy. And I interrupted it. So what happened here? What happened here is that I never did anything to the value. So the value equals 7, and then I have a while value is less than or equal to 70, print value, or print whatever I printed. Hi, print OK. The problem here is that I never changed the value, right? So it entered the loop, the value is 7, it printed value. It went back to the start, it said, is the value less than 70? Yeah, it's still 7. It went back and printed the value. It went back, it said, is the value still less than 70? Yeah, it printed the value. So it does this at computing speed, so it does it incredibly fast. This is the danger of while loops, is that it will crash because you'll forget to define an exit point, or you'll define an exit point and you'll accidentally forget fail to make it match, so it never matches that exit point. So it'll just go forever, and then it'll crash on you, and you'll Control C to get out of it. But so that is uh, the danger of a while loop. So what I want to do is change the value, because I'm going to print the value, and then value equals value plus 7, right? Because I want it to go up and print it 7, 14, 21. So I'm going to increase it by 7. Then I'm going to keep doing that until it no longer is at 70, or no longer is less than 70. I will note that this is one way to print it. A shorter way, the exact same thing, plus equals 7. That's a shorter way to write value equals value plus 7. This little plus equals. It means value equals value plus 7. So it's a good habit to get into. It's a shorthand that you may use frequently. Um, for now, you either will work, but over the long run, get into using value plus equals. So this should work, right? So at this point, we have the same problem we had before, which is that it prints on each line. And how do we solve that? It was the end problem. Print value, but we don't want it to end with a new line. We want it to end with a space. So this way it won't, and we can't forget to add 7 to our value inside the loop. And I think I messed up because I didn't reset the value to initial 7. So let's try that again. While value is less than or equal to 70, print value without a new line, add 7 to it, and let's see what we get. Okay, I think that was it, right? That's 7 through 70, 7 through 70 by 7. The while loop is a bit more code than a for range loop in Python. So yeah, that's just a print statement. So I think that's going to do it. Let me know if you have other questions. Bring it on.